Buddhist Theory of Kamma. Venerable Mahasi Sayadaw. Kamma is the law of moral causation. The theory of Kamma is a fundamental doctrine in Buddhism. This belief was prevalent in India before the advent of the Buddha. Nevertheless, it was the Buddha who explained and formulated this doctrine in the complete form in which we have it today. What is the cause of the inequality that exists among mankind? Why should one person be brought up in the lap of luxury, endowed with fine mental, moral, and physical qualities, and another in absolute poverty, steeped in misery? Why should one person be a mental prodigy, and another an idiot? Why should one person be born with saintly characteristics and another with criminal tendencies? Why should some be linguistic, artistic, mathematically inclined, or musical from the very cradle? Why should others be congenitally blind, deaf, or deformed? Why should some be blessed, and others cursed from their births? Either this inequality of mankind has a cause, or it is purely accidental. No sensible person would think of attributing this unevenness, this inequality, and this diversity to blind chance or pure accident. In this world nothing happens to a person that he does not for some reason or other deserve. Usually, men of ordinary intellect cannot comprehend the actual reason or reasons. The definite invisible cause or causes of the visible effect is not necessarily confined to the present life, they may be traced to a proximate or remote past birth. According to Buddhism, this inequality is due not only to heredity, environment, nature, and nurture, but also to Kamma. In other words, it is the result of our own past actions and our own present doings. We ourselves are responsible for our own happiness and misery. We create our own heaven. We create our own hell. We are the architects of our own fate. Perplexed by the seemingly inexplicable, apparent disparity that existed among humanity, a young truth seeker approached the Buddha and questioned him regarding this intricate problem of inequality. "What is the cause, what is the reason, O Lord," questioned he, "that we find amongst mankind the short-lived and long-lived, the healthy and the diseased, the ugly and beautiful, those lacking influence and the powerful, the poor and the rich, the low-born and the high-born, and the ignorant and the wise?" The Buddha's reply was, "All living beings have actions, Kamma, as their own, their inheritance, their congenital cause, their kinsman, their refuge. It is Kamma that differentiates beings into low and high states." He then explained the cause of such differences in accordance with the law of cause and effect. Certainly we are born with hereditary characteristics. At the same time we possess certain innate abilities that science cannot adequately account for. To our parents we are indebted for the gross sperm and ovum that form the nucleus of this so-called being. They remain dormant within each parent until this potential germinal compound is vitalized by the karmic energy needed for the production of the fetus. Kamma is therefore the indispensable conceptive cause of this being. The accumulated karmic tendencies, inherited in the course of previous lives, at times play a far greater role than the hereditary parental cells and genes in the formation of both physical and mental characteristics. The Buddha, for instance, inherited, like every other person, the reproductive cells and genes from his parents. But physically, morally, and intellectually there was none comparable to him in his long line of royal ancestors. In the Buddha's own words, he belonged not to the royal lineage, but to that of the Aryan Buddhas. He was certainly a superman, an extraordinary creation of his own Kamma. According to the Lakhana Sutta of Dingha, the Buddha inherited exceptional features, such as the 32 major marks, as the result of his past meritorious deeds. The ethical reason for acquiring each physical feature is clearly explained in the sutta. It is obvious from this unique case that karmic tendencies could not only influence our physical organism, but also nullify the potentiality of the parental cells and genes. Hence the significance of the Buddha's enigmatic statement. We are the heirs of our own actions. Dealing with this problem of variation, the Athasalini, being a commentary on the Abhidharma, states, "Depending on this difference in Kamma appears the differences in the birth of beings, high and low, base and exalted, happy and miserable. Depending on the difference in Kamma appears the difference in the individual features of beings as beautiful and ugly, high-born or low-born, well-built or deformed. Depending on the difference in Kamma appears the difference in worldly conditions of beings, such as gain and loss, and disgrace, blame and praise, happiness and misery. Thus, from a Buddhist point of view, our present mental, moral, intellectual, and temperamental differences are, for the most part, due to our own actions and tendencies, both past and present. Although Buddhism attributes this variation to Kamma, as being the chief cause among a variety, it does not, however, assert that everything is due to Kamma. The law of Kamma, important as it is only one of the 24 conditions described in Buddhist philosophy. Refuting the erroneous view that whatsoever fortune or misfortune experienced is all due to some previous action, the Buddha said. So, then, according to this view, owing to previous action men will become murderers, thieves, unchaste, liars, slanderers, covetous, malicious and perverts. Thus, for those who fall back on the former deeds as the essential reason, there is neither the desire to do, nor effort to do, nor necessity to do this deed, or abstain from this deed. It was this important text, which states the belief that all physical circumstances and mental attitudes spring solely from past Kamma that Buddha contradicted. If the present life is totally conditioned or wholly controlled by our past actions, then certainly Kamma is tantamount to fatalism or determinism or predestination. If this were true, free will would be an absurdity. Life would be purely mechanistic, not much different from a machine. Being created by an almighty God who controls our destinies and predetermines our future. Or being produced by an irresistible Kamma that completely determines our fate and controls our life's course, independent of any free action on our part, is essentially the same. The only difference lies in the two words God and Kamma. One could easily be substituted for the other, because the ultimate operation of both forces would be identical. Such a fatalistic doctrine is not the Buddhist law of Kamma. According to Buddhism, there are 5 orders or processes, niyama, which operate in the physical and mental realms. They are 1.U2 niyama, physical inorganic order, e.g. seasonal phenomena of winds and rains. The unerring order of seasons, characteristic seasonal changes and events, causes of winds and rains, nature of heat, etc., all belong to this group. 2.Bija niyama, order of germs and seeds, physical organic order, e.g. rice produced from rice seed, sugary taste from sugarcane or honey, peculiar characteristics of certain fruits, etc. The scientific theory of cells and genes and the physical similarity of twins may be ascribed to this order. 3.Kamma niyama, order of act and result, e.g., desirable and undesirable acts produce corresponding good and bad results. As surely as water seeks its own level, so does Kamma, given opportunity, produce its inevitable result, not in the form of a reward or punishment but as an innate sequence. This sequence of deed and effect is as natural and necessary as the way of the sun and the moon. 4.Dhamma niyama, order of the norm, e.g., the natural phenomena occurring at the advent of a bodhisattva in his last birth. Gravitation and other similar laws of nature. The natural reason for being good and so forth, might be included in this group. 5.Citta niyama, order or mind or psychic law, e.g., processes of consciousness, arising and perishing of consciousness, constituents of consciousness, power of mind, etc. Including telepathy, telesthesia, retrocognition, premonition, clairvoyance, clairaudience, thought reading and such other psychic phenomena which are inexplicable to modern science. Every mental or physical phenomenon could be explained by these all-embracing 5 orders or processes which are laws in themselves. Kamma as such is only one of these 5 orders. Like all other natural laws, they demand no lawgiver. Of these 5, the physical inorganic order and the order of the norm are more or less mechanistic, though they can be controlled to some extent by human ingenuity and the power of mind. For example, fire normally burns, and extreme cold freezes, but man has walked scatheless over fire and meditated naked on Himalayan snows. Horticulturists have worked marvels with flowers and fruits, yogis have performed levitation. Psychic law is equally mechanistic. But Buddhist training aims at control of mind, which is possible by right understanding and skillful volition. Kamma law operates quite automatically and, when the Kamma is powerful, man cannot interfere with its inexorable result though he may desire to do so. But here also right understanding and skillful volition can accomplish much and mold the future. Good Kamma, persisted in, can thwart the reaping of bad Kamma. Or as some Western scholars prefer to say, action influence, is certainly an intricate law whose working is fully comprehended only by a Buddha. The Buddhist aims at the final destruction of all Kamma. What is karma? The Pali term Kamma literally means action or doing. Any kind of intentional action, whether mental, verbal, or physical, is regarded as Kamma. It covers all that is included in the phrase thought, word and deed. Generally speaking, all good and bad action constitutes Kamma. In its ultimate sense, Kamma means all moral and immoral volition. Involuntary, unintentional, or unconscious actions, though technically deeds, do not constitute Kamma, because volition, the most important factor in determining Kamma, is absent. The Buddha says, I declare, O Bhikkhus, that volition is Kamma. Having willed, one acts by body, speech, and thought. Anguttara Nikaya. Every volitional action of individuals, save those of Buddhas and Arahants, is called Kamma. The exception made in their case is because they are delivered from both good and evil, they have eradicated ignorance and craving, the roots of Kamma. Destroyed are their germinal seeds, Kina Bija, selfish desires no longer grow, states the Ratana Sutta of Sutta Nipata. This does not mean that the Buddha and Arahantas are passive. They are tirelessly active in working for the real well-being and happiness of all. Their deeds, ordinarily accepted as good or moral, lack creative power as regards themselves. Understanding things as they truly are, they have finally shattered their cosmic fetters. The chain of cause and effect. Kamma does not necessarily mean past actions. It embraces both past and present deeds. Hence, in one sense, we are the result of what we were. We will be the result of what we are. In another sense, it should be added, we are not totally the result of what we were. We will not absolutely be the result of what we are. The present is no doubt the offspring of the past and is the present of the future. But the present is not always a true index of either the past or the future. So complex is the working of Kamma. It is this doctrine of Kamma that the mother teaches her child when she says, be good and you will be happy and we will love you. But if you are bad, you will be unhappy and we will not love you. In short, Kamma is the law of cause and effect in the ethical realm. Kamma and Vipaka. Kamma is action, and Vipaka, fruit or result, is its reaction. Just as every object is accompanied by a shadow, even so every volitional activity is inevitably accompanied by its due effect. Kamma is like potential seed, Vipaka could be likened to the fruit arising from the tree. The effect or result. Anasamsa and Adinaya are the leaves, flowers, and so forth that correspond to external differences such as health, sickness and poverty. These are inevitable consequences, which happen at the same time. Strictly speaking, both Kamma and Vipaka pertain to the mind. As Kamma may be good or bad, so may Vipaka. The fruit is good or bad. As Kamma is mental, so Vipaka is mental, of the mind. It is experienced as happiness, bliss, unhappiness, or misery, according to the nature of the Kamma seed. Anasamsa are the concomitant advantages, material things such as prosperity, health, and longevity. When Vipaka's concomitant material things are disadvantageous, they are known as Adinaya, full of wretchedness, and appear as poverty, ugliness, disease, short lifespan and so forth. As we sow, we reap somewhere and sometime, in his life or in a future birth. What we reap today is what we have sown either in the present or in the past. The Samyutta Nikaya states, according to the seed that's sown, so is the fruit you reap therefrom. Doer of good will gather good. Doer of evil, evil reaps. Down is the seed and thou shalt taste the fruit thereof. Kamma is a law in itself, which operates in its own field without the intervention of any external, independent ruling agency. Happiness and misery, which are the common lot of humanity, are the inevitable effects of causes. From a Buddhist point of view, they are not rewards and punishments, assigned by a supernatural, omniscient ruling power to a soul that has done good or evil. Theists, who attempt to explain everything in this and temporal life and in the eternal future life, ignoring a past, believe in a post-mortem justice, and may regard present happiness and misery as blessings and curses conferred on his creation by an omniscient and omnipotent divine ruler who sits in heaven above, controlling the destinies of the human race. Buddhism, which emphatically denies such an almighty, all-merciful God creator and an arbitrarily created immortal soul, believes in natural law and justice which cannot be suspended by either an almighty God or an all-compassionate Buddha. According to this natural law, acts bear their own rewards and punishments to the individual doer whether human justice finds out or not. There are some who criticize thus, so, you Buddhists, too, administer capitalistic opium to the people, saying, you are born poor in this life on account of your past evil karma. He is born rich on account of his good karma. So, be satisfied with your humble lot, but do good to be rich in your next life. You are being oppressed now because of your past evil karma. There is your destiny. Be humble and bear your sufferings patiently. Do good now. You can be certain of a better and happier life after death. The Buddhist doctrine of Kamma does not expound such ridiculous fatalistic views. Nor does it vindicate a post-mortem justice. The all-merciful Buddha, who had no ulterior selfish motives, did not teach this law of Kamma to protect the rich and comfort the poor by promising illusory happiness in an afterlife. While we are born to a state created by ourselves, yet by our own self-directed efforts there is every possibility for us to create new, favorable environments even here and now. Not only individually, but also, collectively, we are at liberty to create fresh Kamma that leads either towards our progress or downfall in this very life. According to the Buddhist doctrine of Kamma, one is not always compelled by an iron necessity, for Kamma is neither fate nor predestination imposed upon us by some mysterious unknown power to which we must helplessly submit ourselves. It is one's own doing reacting on oneself, and so one has the possibility to divert the course of one's Kamma to some extent. How far one diverts it depends on oneself. Is one bound to reap all that one has sown in just proportion? The Buddha provides an answer. If anyone says that a man or woman must reap in this life according to his present deeds, in that case there is no religious life, nor is an opportunity afforded for the entire extinction of sorrow. But if anyone says that what a man or woman reaps in this and future lives accords with his or her deeds present and past, in that case there is a religious life. And an opportunity is afforded for the entire extinction of a sorrow. Anguttara Nikaya. Although it is stated in the Dhammapada that not in the sky, nor in mid-ocean, or entering a mountain cave is found that place on earth where one may escape from the consequences of an evil deed, yet one is not bound to pay all the past arrears of one's Kamma. If such were the case, emancipation would be impossibility. Eternal recurrence would be the unfortunate result. What is the cause of Kamma? Ignorance, avijja, or not knowing things as they truly are, is the chief cause of Kamma. Dependent on ignorance arise activities, avijja pakaya samkara, states the Buddha in the Pitaka Samuppada, dependent origination. Associated with ignorance is the ally craving, tanha, the other root of Kamma. Evil actions are conditioned by these two causes. All good deeds of a worldling, puthujana, though associated with the three wholesome roots of generosity, alobha, goodwill, adosa, and knowledge, amoha, are nevertheless regarded as Kamma because the two roots of ignorance and craving are dormant in him. The moral types of supramundane path consciousness, magasiddha, are not regarded as Kamma because they tend to eradicate the two root causes. Who is the doer of Kamma? Who reaps the fruit of Kamma? Does Kamma mold a soul? In answering these subtle questions, the Venerable Buddhaghosa writes in the Visuddhimagga, no doer is there who does the deed. Nor is there one who feels the fruit. constituent parts alone roll on. This indeed is right discernment. For instance, the table we see is apparent reality. In an ultimate sense, this so-called table consists of forces and qualities. For ordinary purposes, a scientist would use the term water, but in the laboratory he would say H20. In this same way, for conventional purposes, such terms as man, woman, being, self, and so forth are used. The so-called fleeting forms consist of psychophysical phenomena, which are constantly changing, not remaining the same for 2 consecutive moments. Buddhists, therefore, do not believe in an unchanging entity, in an actor apart from action, in a perceiver apart from perception, in a conscious subject behind consciousness. Who then is the doer of Kamma? Who experiences the effect? Volition, or will, Cetana, is itself the doer, feeling, Vedana, is itself the reaper of the fruits of actions. Apart from these pure mental states, Suddhadhamma, there is no one to sow and no one to reap. Classification of Kamma. A. With respect to different functions, Kamma is classified into 4 kinds. 1. Reproductive Kamma. Every birth is conditioned by a past good or bad Kamma, which predominated at the moment of death. Kamma that conditions the future birth is called reproductive Kamma. The death of a person is merely a temporary end of a temporary phenomenon. Though the present form perishes, another form which is neither the same nor absolutely different takes its place, according to the potential thought vibration generated at the death moment. Because the karmic force which propels the life flux still survives. It is this last thought, which is technically called reproductive, Janaka, Kamma, that determines the state of a person in his subsequent birth. This may be either a good or bad Kamma. According to the commentary, reproductive Kamma is that which produces mental aggregates and material aggregates at the moment of conception. The initial consciousness, which is termed the Padasandhi rebirth consciousness, is conditioned by this reproductive, Janaka, Kamma. Simultaneous with the arising of the rebirth consciousness, there arise the body decade, sex decade, and base decade, Kaya Bhavavatha Dasakas. Decade equals 10 factors. A. The body decade is composed of 1. The element of extension, Padhavi. 2. The element of cohesion, Apo. 3. The element of heat, Taha. 4. The element of motion, Vayo. B. The 4 derivatives, Upadana Rupa. 1. Color, Vana. 2. Odor, Gandha. 3. Taste, Rasa. 4. Nutritive essence, Aja. These 8, Mahabhuta 4 plus Upadana 4 equals 8, are collectively called Avinibhaga Rupa, indivisible form or indivisible matter. C. Vitality, Jivadindriya, and body, Kaya. These, Avinibhaga 8 plus Jivadindriya 1 plus Kaya 1 equals 10, 10 are collectively called body decade equals, Kaya Dasaka. Sex decade and base decade also consist of the first 9, sex, bhava, and seat of consciousness, vathu, respectively, i.e. eye, ear, nose, tongue, and body. From this, it is evident that the sex of a person is determined at the very conception of a being. It is conditioned by Kamma and is not a fortuitous combination of sperm and ovum cells. The pain and happiness one experiences in the course of one's lifetime are the inevitable consequence of reproductive Kamma. 2. Supportive Kamma. That which comes near the reproductive, Janaka, Kamma and supports it. It is neither good nor bad and it assists or maintains the action of the reproductive, Janaka, Kamma in the course of one's lifetime. Immediately after conception till the death moment this Kamma steps forward to support the reproductive Kamma. A moral supportive, Kusala Upatamhaka, Kamma assists in giving health, wealth, happiness etc. to the being born with a moral reproductive Kamma. An immoral supportive Kamma, on the other hand, assists in giving pain, sorrow, etc. to the being born with an immoral reproductive, Akusala Janaka, Kamma, as for instance to a beast of burden. 3. Obstructive Kamma or counteractive Kamma, which, unlike the former, tends to weaken, interrupt, and retard the fruition of the reproductive Kamma. For instance, a person born with a good reproductive Kamma may be subject to various ailments etc., thus preventing him from enjoying the blissful results of his good actions. An animal, on the other hand, who is born with a bad reproductive Kamma may lead a comfortable life by getting good food, lodging, etc. As a result of his good counteractive or obstructive, upabidaka, Kamma preventing the fruition of the evil reproductive Kamma. For destructive, upagataka, Kamma. According to the law of Kamma, the potential energy of the reproductive Kamma could be nullified by a mere powerful opposing Kamma of the past, which, seeking an opportunity, may quite unexpectedly operate. Just as a powerful counteractive force can obstruct the path of a flying arrow and bring it down to the ground. Such an action is called destructive, upagataka, Kamma, which is more effective than the previous two in that it is not only obstructive but also destroys the whole force. This destructive Kamma also may be either good or bad. As an instance of operation of all the four, the case of Devadatta, who attempted to kill the Buddha and who caused a schism in the Sangha, disciples of the Buddha, may be cited. His good reproductive Kamma brought him birth in a royal family. His continued comfort and prosperity were due to the action of the supportive Kamma. The counteractive or obstructive Kamma came into operation when he was subject to much humiliation as a result of his being excommunicated from the Sangha. Finally, the destructive Kamma brought his life to a miserable end. b. There is another classification of Kamma, according to the priority of effect. 1. Weighty, Garuka, Kamma. This is either weighty or serious, may be either good or bad. It produces its results in this life or in the next for certain. If good, it is purely mental as in the case of jhana, ecstasy or absorption. Otherwise it is verbal or bodily. On the immoral side, there are 5 immediate effective heinous crimes: Pankanantarya Kamma, matricide, patricide, and the murder of an arahant. The wounding of a Buddha and the creation of a schism in the Sangha. Permanent skepticism, Nyata Michadathi, is also termed one of the weighty, Garuka, Kammas. If, for instance, any person were to develop the jhana, ecstasy or absorption, and later were to commit one of these heinous crimes, his good Kamma would be obliterated by the powerful evil Kamma. His subsequent birth would be conditioned by the evil Kamma in spite of his having gained the jhana earlier. Devadatta lost his psychic power and was born in an evil state, because he wounded the Buddha and caused a schism in the Sangha. King Ajatasattu would have attained the first stage of sainthood, Sotapanna, if he had not committed patricide. In this case the powerful evil Kamma acted as an obstacle to his gaining sainthood. 2. Proximate, Asana, Kamma or death proximate Kamma. This is that which one does or remembers immediately before the moment of dying. Owing to the great part it plays in determining the future birth, much importance is attained to this deathbed, asana, Kamma in almost all Buddhist countries. The customs of reminding the dying man of good deeds and making him do good acts on his deathbed still prevails in Buddhist countries. Sometimes a bad person may die happily and receive a good birth if he remembers or does a good act at the last moment. A story runs that a certain executioner who casually happened to give some alms to the Venerable Sariputta remembered this good act at the dying moment and was born in a state of bliss. This does not mean that although he enjoys a good birth he will be exempt from the effects of the evil deeds which he accumulated during his lifetime. They will have their due effect as occasions arise. At times a good person may die unhappy by suddenly remembering an evil act of his or by harboring some unpleasant thought, perchance compelled by unfavorable circumstances. In the scriptures, Queen Malika, the consort of King Kosala, remembering a lie she had uttered, suffered for about 7 days in a state of misery when she lied to her husband to cover some misbehavior. These are exceptional cases. Such reverse changes of birth account for the birth of virtuous children to vicious parents and of vicious children to virtuous parents. As a result of the last thought moment being conditioned by the general conduct of the person. 3. Habitual, Aksena, Kamma. It is that which one habitually performs and recollects and for which one has a great liking. Habits whether good or bad becomes one's second nature, tending to form the character of a person. At unguarded moments one often lapses into one's habitual mental mindset. In the same way, at the death moment, unless influenced by other circumstances, one usually recalls to mind one's habitual deeds. Kunda, a butcher, who was living in the vicinity of the Buddha's monastery, died yelling like an animal because he was earning his living by slaughtering pigs. King Dut Tagamini of Ceylon, Sri Lanka, was in the habit of giving alms to the bhikkhus, monks, before he took his own meals. It was his habitual kamma that gladdened him at the dying moment and gave him birth in the Tusita heaven. 4. Reserve or cumulative, Kadata, Kamma. This literally means because done. All actions that are not included in the aforementioned and those actions soon forgotten belong to this category. This is, as it were, the reserve fund of a particular being. See, there is another classification of kamma according to the time in which effects are worked out. 1. Immediately effective, Dithadhamavdaniya, Kamma. 2. Subsequently effective, Apapajavdaniya, Kamma. 3. Indefinitely effective, Aparaparayavdaniya, Kamma. 4. Defunct or ineffective, Ahosi, Kamma. Immediately effective kamma is that which is experienced in this present life. According to the Abhidhamma, one does both good and evil during the jhana process, thought impulsion, which usually lasts for 7 thought moments. The effect of the first thought moment, being the weakest, one may reap in this life itself. This is called the immediately effective kamma. If it does not operate in this life, it is called defunct or ineffective kamma. The next weakest is the 7th thought moment. Its effect one may reap in the subsequent birth. This is called subsequently effective kamma. This, too, is called defunct or ineffective kamma if it does not operate in the second birth. The effect of the intermediate thought moments may take place at any time until one attains nibbana. This type of kamma is known as indefinitely effective kamma. No one, not even the Buddhas and Arahants, is exempt from this class of kamma which one may experience in the course of one's wandering in samsara. There is no special class of kamma known as defunct or ineffective, but when such actions that should produce their effects in this life or in a subsequent life do not operate, they are termed defunct or ineffective kamma. D. The last classification of kamma is according to the plane in which the effect takes place, namely 1. Evil actions, akusala kamma, which may ripen in the sentient planes, Kamaloka. 6 celestial planes plus 1 human plane plus 4 woeful planes equals 11 Kamalokaplans. Here are only 4 woeful Kamalokas. 2. Good actions, Kusala Kamma, which may ripen in the sentient planes except for the 4 woeful planes. 3. Good actions, Kusala Kamma, which may ripen in the realm of form, Rupa Brahmalokas. There are 4 Arupa Brahmalokas. Questions on the theory of Kamma. Question: do the kammas of parents determine or affect the kammas of their children? Answer: physically, the kamma of children is generally determined by the kamma of their parents. Thus, healthy parents usually have healthy offspring, and unhealthy parents have unhealthy children. On the effect or how the kamma of their children is determined, the child's kamma is a thing apart of itself. It forms the child's individuality, the sum total of its merits and demerits accumulated in innumerable past existences. For example, the kamma of the Buddha to be Prince Siddhartha was certainly not influenced by the joint kamma of his parents, King Suddhodana and Queen Maya. The glorious and powerful kamma of our Buddha to be transcended the kamma of his parents, which jointly were more potent than his own. Question: if the kamma of parents do not influence those of their children, how would the fact be explained that parents who suffer from certain virulent diseases are apt to transmit these evils to their offsprings? Answer: where a child inherits such a disease, it is due to the force of the parent's characteristics because of the force of the latter's U2, conditions favorable to germination. Take, for example, 2 seeds from a sapling, plant one in inferior, dry soil, and the other in rich, moist soil. The result is that the first seed will sprout into a sickly sapling and soon show symptoms of disease and decay, while the other seed will thrive and flourish and grow up to be a tall and healthy tree. It will be observed that the pair of seeds taken from the same stalk grows up differently according to the soil into which they are put. A child's past kamma may be compared to the seed, the physical disposition of the mother to the soil, and that of the father to the moisture, which fertilized the soil. Roughly speaking, to illustrate our subject, we will say that, representing the sapling's germination, growth, and existence as a unit, the seed is responsible for 1/10 of them, the soil for 6/10, and the moisture for the remainder, 3/10. Thus, although the power of germination exists potentially in the seed, the child, its growth is powerfully determined and quickened by the soil, the mother, and the moisture, the father. Therefore, even as the conditions of the soil and moisture must be taken as largely responsible factors in the growth and condition of the tree, so must the influences of the parents, or progenitors, as in the case of the animal world, be taken into account in respect to the conception and growth of their offspring. The parents' share in the kamma determining the physical factors of their issue is as follows: if they are human beings, then their offspring will be a human being. If they are cattle, then their issue must be of their species. If the human being is Chinese, then their offspring must be of their race. Thus, the offspring are invariably of the same genera and species, etc., as those of the progenitors. It will be seen from the above that, although a child's kamma is very powerful in itself, it cannot remain wholly uninfluenced by those of its parents. It is apt to inherit the physical characteristic of its parents. Yet, it may occur that the child's kamma, being superlatively powerful, the influence of the parents' joint kamma cannot overshadow it. Of course, it need hardly be pointed out that the evil influences of parents can also be counteracted by the application of medical science. All beings born of sexual cohabitation are the resultant effects of three forces. 1. The old kamma of past existence. 2. The seminal fluid of the mother, and 3. The seminal fluid of the father. The physical dispositions of the parents may, or may not, be equal in force. One may counteract the other to a lesser or greater extent. The child's kamma and physical characteristics, such as race, color, etc., will be the produce of the three forces. Question: on the death of a sentient being, is there a soul that wanders about at will? Answer: when a sentient being leaves one existence, it is reborn either as a human being, a celestial being, deva or brahma, an inferior animal, or a denizen of one of the regions of hell. The skeptics and the ignorant people held that there are intermediate stages antrabhava between these, and that there are beings who are neither of the human, the celestial, the deva or the Brahma worlds nor of any one of the stages of exist recognized in the scriptures but are in an intermediate stage. Some assert that these transitional stages are possessed of the 5 khandhas, 5 aggregates. They are matter, rupa, feeling, vedana, perception, sanna, 4 mental activities, sankhara, and consciousness, vijnana. Some assert that these beings are detached souls or spirits with no material encasement, and some again that they are possessed of the faculty of seeing like devas, and further, that they have power of changing at will, at short intervals, from one to any of the existence mentioned above. Others again hold the fantastic and erroneous theory that these beings can, and so, fancy themselves to be in other than the existence they are actually in. Thus, to take for example one such of these supposititious beings. He is a poor person and yet he fancies himself to be rich. He may be in hell, and yet he fancies himself to be in the land of the devas, and so on. This belief in intermediate stages between existences is false, and is condemned in the Buddhist teachings. A human being in this life who, by his kamma is destined to be a human being in the next, will be reborn as such. One who by his kamma is destined to be a deva in the next will appear in the land of the devas, and one whose future life is to be in hell, will be found in one of the regions of hell in the next existence. The idea of an entity or soul or spirit going, coming, changing or transmigrating from one existence to another is an idea entertained by the ignorance and materialistic, and is certainly not justified by the Dhammas that there is no such thing as going, coming, changing, etc., as between existences. The conception, which is in accordance with the Dhamma, may perhaps be illustrated by the picture thrown out by a cinema projector, or the sound emitted by the gramophone, and their relation to the film or the sound box and records respectively. For example, a human being dies and is reborn in the land of Devas. Though these two existences are different, yet the link or continuity between the two at death is unbroken in point of time. The same is true in the case of a man whose further existence is to be in hell. The distance between hell and the abode of man appears to be great. Yet, in point of time, the continuity of passage from the one existence to the other is unbroken. And no intervening matter or space can interrupt the trend of a man's kamma from the world of human beings to the regions of hell. The passage from one existence to another is instantaneous, and the transition is infinitely quicker than the blink of an eyelid or a lightning flash. Kamma determines the realm of rebirth and the state of existence in that realm of all transient being, in the cycle of existences, which have to be traversed till the attainment, at last, of nibbana. The results of kamma are manifold, and may be effected in many ways. Religious offerings, dana, may obtain for a man the privilege of rebirth as a human being, or as a deva, in one of the 6 deva worlds according to the degree of the merit of the deeds performed. And so with the observance of religious duties, sila. The yahanas or states of absorption, are found in the Brahma world or Brahma lokas up to the summit. The 20th Brahma world, and so with bad deeds, the perpetrators of which are to be found, grade by grade, down to the lowest depths of hell. Thus our kamma, past, present and future were, are, and will ever be the sum total of our deeds, good, indifferent or bad. As was seen from the foregoing, our kamma determines the changes of our existences. Evil spirits are, therefore, not beings in an intermediate or transitional stages of existence, but are really very inferior beings, and they belong to one of the following 5 realms of existence. 1. World of men. 2. The lowest plane of Deva world. 3. The region of hell. 4. Animals below men. And 5. Pitas, ghosts. Number 2 and 5 are very near the world of human beings. As their condition is unhappy, and they are popularly considered evil spirits. It is not true that all who die in this world are reborn as evil spirits, nor is it true that beings who die sudden or violent deaths are apt to be reborn in the lowest plane of the world of Devas. Question: is there such a thing as a human being who is reborn and who is able to speak accurately of his or her past existence? Answer: certainly, this is not an uncommon occurrence, and is in accordance with the tenets of Buddhism in respect to kamma. The following, who form an overwhelming majority of human beings, are generally unable to remember their past existences when reborn as human beings: children who die young, those who die old and senile, those who are addicted to the drug or drink habit, those whose mothers, during their conception, have been sickly or have had to toil laboriously, or have been reckless or imprudent during pregnancy. The children in the womb, being stunned and started, lose all knowledge of their past existence. The following are possessed of a knowledge of their past existences, viz., those who are not reborn in the human world, but proceed to the world of the Devas, of Brahmas, or to the regions of hell, remember their past existences. Those who die suddenly deaths from accidents, while in sound health, may also be possessed of this faculty in the next existence, provided that their mothers, in whose womb they are conceived, are healthy. Again, those who live steady, meritorious lives and who in their past existences have striven to attain, often attain it. Lastly, the Buddha, the Arahants, and Aryas attain this gift which is known as Pabbanivasa Abhina, supernatural power remembering previous existences. Question: which are the 5 Abhina? Are they attainable only by the Buddha? Answer: the 5 Abhina, supernatural powers Pali, Abhai, excellent, Nana, wisdom, are. Idhivadha equals creative power. Dibbasola equals divine ear. Sitaparyanana equals knowledge of others' thoughts. Pabanivasanusati equals knowledge of one's past existence. Dibbakaku equals the divine eye. The Abhina are attainable not only by the Buddha, but also by Arantas and Aryas, by ordinary mortals who practice according to the scriptures, as was the case with hermits etc., who flourished before the time of the Buddha and who were able to fly through the air and traverse different worlds. In the Buddhist scriptures, we find, clearly shown, the means of attaining the 5 abhina. And even nowadays, if these means are carefully and perseveringly pursued, it would be possible to attain these. That we do not see any person endowed with the 5 abhina today is due to the lack of strenuous physical and mental exertion towards their attainment. Nature of Kamma. In the working of Kamma there are maleficent and beneficent forces and conditions to counteract and support this self-operating law. Birth, gati, time or condition, kala, substratum of rebirth or showing attachment to rebirth, upati, and effort, payaga, act as such powerful aids and hindrances to the fruition of Kamma. Though we are neither absolutely the servants nor the masters of our Kamma, it is evident from these counteractive and supportive factors that the fruition of Kamma is influenced to some extent by external circumstances, surroundings, personality, individual striving, and so forth. It is this doctrine of Kamma that gives consolation, hope, reliance and moral courage to a Buddhist. When the unexpected happens, and he meets with difficulties, failures, and misfortune, the Buddhist realizes that he is reaping what he has sown, and he is wiping off a past debt. Instead of resigning himself, leaving everything to Kamma, he makes a strenuous effort to pull the weeds and sow useful seeds in their place, for the future is in his own hands. He who believes in Kamma does not condemn even the most corrupt, for they, too, have their chance to reform themselves at any moment. Though bound to suffer in woeful states, they have hope of attaining eternal peace. By their own doings they have created their own hells, and by their own doings they can create their own heavens, too. A Buddhist who is fully convinced of the law of Kamma does not pray to another to be saved but confidently relies on him for his own emancipation. Instead of making any self-surrender, or calling on any supernatural agency, he relies on his own willpower, and works incessantly for the well-being and happiness of all. This belief in Kamma validates his effort and kindles his enthusiasm, because it teaches individual responsibility. To the ordinary Buddhist, Kamma serves as a deterrent, while to an intellectual, it serves as an incentive to do good. He or she becomes kind, tolerant, and considerate. This law of Kamma explains the problem of suffering, the mastery of so-called fate and predestination of other religions and about all the inequality of mankind. 2. The second enlightenment factor is Dhammavikaya, keen investigation of the Dhamma. It is the sharp analytical knowledge of understanding the true nature of all constituent things animate or inanimate, human or divine. It is seeing things as they really are, seeing things in their proper perspective. It is the analysis of all component things into their fundamental elements, right down to their ultimates. Through keen investigation one understands that all compounded things pass through the inconceivably rapid moments of upada, titi, and bhanga, or of arising, reaching a peak, and ceasing, just as a river in flood sweeps to a climax and fades away. The whole universe is constantly changing, not remaining the same for 2 consecutive moments. All things in fact are subjected to causes, conditions, and effects, hichu, pakaya, and phala. Systematic reflection, yoniso manasikara, comes naturally through right mindfulness, and it urges one to discriminate, to reason, and investigate. Shallow thinking, unsystematic investigation, ioniso manasikara, makes men muddle-headed, and then they fail to investigate the nature of things. Such people cannot see cause and effect, seed and fruit, the rise and fall of compounded things. Says the Buddha, this doctrine is for the wise and not for the unwise. 9. Buddhism is free from compulsion and coercion and does not demand of the follower blind faith. At the very outset the skeptic will be pleased to hear of its call for investigation. Buddhism from beginning to end is open to all those who have eyes to see and minds to understand. The Buddha never endeavored to wring out of his followers blind and submissive faith in him and his teaching. He tutors his disciples in the ways of discrimination and intelligent inquiry. To the inquiring Kalamas the Buddha answered, right is it to doubt, right is it to question what is doubtful and what is not clear. In a doubtful matter wavering does arise. We find this dialogue between the master and his disciples. The Buddha, if, now knowing this and perceiving this, would you say, we honor our master and through respect for him we respect what he teaches. Nay, Lord. That which you affirm, O disciples, is it not only that which you yourselves have recognized, seen, and grasped? Yes, Lord. Mn 38. And in conformity with this thoroughly correct attitude of true inquiry the philosophers of later times observed, as the wise test the purity of gold by burning, cutting and examining it by means of a piece of touchstone, so should you accept my words after examining them and not merely out of regard and reverence for me. 10. Thus blind belief is condemned in the analytic teaching, Vibhajavada, of the Buddha. The truth of the Dhamma can be grasped only through calm concentrative thought and insight, Samadhi and Vipassana, and never through blind faith. One who goes in quest of truth is never satisfied with surface knowledge. He wants to delve deep and see what is beneath. That is the sort of search encouraged in Buddhism. That type of search yields right understanding. We read in the texts the following story. On one occasion Upali, a fervent follower of Nigantha the Buddha, the Jain, visited the Buddha, thoughtfully listened to the Dhamma, gained Sayadaw, confidence based on knowledge, and forthwith manifested his readiness to become a follower of the Master. Nevertheless the Master said, of a truth, Upali, make thorough investigation, and thus discouraged him. This clearly shows that the Buddha was not keen on converting people to his way of thinking, and to his fold. He did not interfere with another man's freedom of thought, for freedom of thought is the birthright of every individual. It is wrong to force someone out of the way of life which accords with his outlook and character, spiritual inclinations and tendencies. Compulsion in every form is bad. It is coercion of the blackest kind to make a man gulp down beliefs for which he has no relish. Such forced feeding cannot be good for anybody, anywhere. He that cultivates Dhammavikaya, investigation of the Dhamma, focuses his mind on the 5 aggregates of grasping, the Pancupadanakandha, and endeavors to realize the rise and fall or the arising and passing away, Udayavaya, of this conglomeration of bare forces, Sutta Sankhara Punya, this conflux of mind and matter, Namarupa Santati. It is only when he fully realizes the evanescent nature of his own mind and body that he experiences happiness, joyous anticipation. Therefore, it is said, Yato yato samasati kandhanam udaya bayam. Labhati piti pamajam amatam tam vihanatam. Whenever he reflects on the rise and fall of the aggregates, he experiences unalloyed joy and happiness. To the discerning one that, reflection, is deathless, nibbana. DHP 374. What is impermanent and not lasting he sees as sorrow-fraught. What is impermanent and sorrow-fraught, he understands as void of a permanent and everlasting soul, self, or ego entity. It is this grasping, this realization of the 3 characteristics, or laws of transience, sorrow and non-self, soullessness, anicca, dukkha, and anatta that is known to Buddhists as vipassanana or penetrative insight, which, like the razor-edged sword, entirely eradicates all the latent tendencies, anicca, and with it all the varied ramifications of sorrow's cause are finally destroyed. A man who ascends to this summit of vision is an arahat, a perfect one, whose clarity of vision, whose depth of insight, penetrates into the deepest recesses of life and cognizes the true nature that underlies all appearance. No more can he be swept off his feet by the glamour of things ephemeral. No more can he be confused by fearful and terrible appearances. No more is it possible for him to have a clouded view of phenomena, for he has transcended all capacity for error through the perfect immunity which penetrative insight alone can give. 3. The third enlightenment factor is virya, energy. It is a mental property, cetasika, and the 6th limb of the Noble Eightfold Path, they're called samavayama, right effort. The life of the Buddha clearly reveals that he was never subjected to moral or spiritual fatigue. From the hour of his enlightenment to the end of his life, he strove tirelessly to elevate mankind, regardless of the bodily fatigue involved, and oblivious to the many obstacles and handicaps that hampered his way. He never relaxed in his exertion for the common weal. Though physically he was not always fit, mentally he was ever vigilant and energetic. Of him it is said, "Ah, wonderful is the conqueror, who e'er untiring strives for the blessing of all beings, for the comfort of all lives." Buddhism is for the sincerely zealous, strong, and firm in purpose, and not for the indolent, arid virayase am dhammo na am dhammo kusatasa. 11 The Buddha has not proclaimed himself a savior willing and able to take upon himself the evil of mankind. On the contrary, he declares that each person has to bear the burden of his ill deeds. In the words of the Buddha, each individual has himself to put forth the necessary effort and work out his own deliverance with diligence. The Buddha is only a path revealer and not a savior who endeavors to save souls by means of a revealed religion. The idea that another raises a man from lower to higher levels of life, and ultimately rescues him, tends to make a man indolent and weak, supine and foolish. Others may lend us a helping hand indirectly, but deliverance from suffering must be wrought out and fashioned by each one for himself upon the anvil of his own actions. Be ye islands unto yourselves, be ye your own refuge. 12 Thus did the Master exhort his followers to acquire self-reliance. A follower of the Buddha should not under any circumstances relinquish hope and effort, for the Buddha was one who never gave up hope and courage even as a bodhisattva. As an aspirant for Buddhahood, he had as his motto the following inspiring words: Manivada, abhikamma falter not, advance. The man who is mindful, saddhamma, and cultivates keen investigation should next put forth the necessary effort to fight his way out. The function of energy is fourfold: 1. The effort to eradicate evils that have arisen in the mind, 2. The effort to prevent the arising of unarisen evil, 3. The effort to develop unarisen good, 4. The effort to promote the further growth of good already arisen. 13. Just, says the Vitaka Santhana Sutta Anta of the Majjhima Nikaya, number 20, as a competent carpenter or carpenter's apprentice with a slender pin will knock out, remove and dispose of a thicker one, so also, when through dwelling on some idea that has come to him, evil, unsalutary considerations connected with desire, hate, and delusion arise in the monk, then he should engender in his mind an idea other than that former idea and connected with salutary things, whereupon the evil unsalutary considerations will disappear, and with their disappearing his mind will become settled, subdued, unified, concentrated. 14. Thus the path of purification is impossible for an indolent person. The aspirant for enlightenment, bodhi, should possess unflinching energy coupled with fixed determination. Enlightenment and deliverance lie absolutely and entirely in his own hands. Man must himself by his own resolute efforts rise and make his way to the portals of liberty, and it is always, in every moment, in his power so to do. Neither are those portals locked and the key in possession of someone else from whom it must be obtained by prayer and entreaty. That door is free of all bolts and bars save those the man himself has made. By precept and example, the Buddha was an exponent of the strenuous life. Hear these words of the Buddha: the idler who does not strive, who, though young and strong, is full of sloth, who is weak in resolution, that lazy and idle man will not find the way to wisdom, the way to enlightenment. 15. Following in the footsteps of the Buddha, the disciple thinks, though only my skin, sinews, and bones remain, and my blood and flesh dry up and wither away, yet never will I give up my quest and swerve from the path of rectitude and enlightenment. 4. The fourth enlightenment factor is piti, rapture or happiness. This, too, is a mental property, cetasika, and is a quality which suffuses both the body and mind. The man lacking in this quality cannot proceed along the path to enlightenment. There will arise in him a sullen indifference to the Dhamma, an aversion to the practice of meditation, and morbid manifestations. It is, therefore, very necessary that a man striving to attain enlightenment and final deliverance from the fetters of samsara, that repeated wandering, should endeavor to cultivate the all-important factor of happiness. No one can bestow on another the gift of happiness, each one has to build it up by effort, reflection, and concentrated activity. As happiness is a thing of the mind, it should be sought not in external and material things, though they may in a small way be instrumental. Contentment is a characteristic of the really happy individual. The ordinary worldling seems to think that it is difficult to cultivate and develop contentment, but by dint of courage, determination, systematic attention, and thought about the things one meets with in everyday life, by controlling one's evil inclinations, and by curbing the impulses, the sudden tendencies to act without reflection, one can keep the mind from being soiled and experience happiness through contentment. In man's mind arise conflicts of diverse kinds, and if these conflicts are to be controlled, while still not eliminated, man must give less rein to inclinations and longings. In other words, he must cultivate contentment. Hard it is to give up what lures and holds us in thrall, and hard it is to exorcise the evil spirits that haunt the human heart in the shape of ugly and unwholesome thoughts. These evils are the manifestations of lust, hate, and delusion, labha, dosa, and moha. Until one attains to the very crest of purity and peace by constant training of the mind, one cannot defeat these hosts completely. The mere abandoning of outward things, fasting, bathing in rivers and hot springs, and so forth, these do not tend to purify a man, these things do not make a man happy, holy, and harmless. Hence the need to develop the Buddha's path of purification, morality, meditation, and insight, sila, samadhi, and panna. When discussing happiness, in the context of Sambhajayahangas, we must bear in mind the vast difference between pleasure and happiness. Pleasure, pleasant feeling, is something very momentary and fleeting. Is it wrong to say that pleasant feelings are the prelude to pain? What people hug in great glee this moment, turns to be a source of pain in the next moment. The desired is no longer there when the outstretched hand would grasp it, or, being there and grasped, it vanishes like a flake of snow. In the words of Robert Burns, pleasures are like poppies spread. You seize the flower, its bloom is shed. Or, like the snowfall in the river. A moment white, then melts forever. Seeing a form, hearing a sound, perceiving an odor, tasting a flavor, feeling some tangible thing, cognizing an idea, people are moved, and from those sense objects and mental objects they experience a certain degree of pleasure. But it is all a passing show of phenomena. Unlike the animal whose sole purpose is to derive a feeling of pleasure from any source, at any cost, man should endeavor to gain real pity or happiness. Real happiness or rapture comes not through grasping or clinging to things animate or inanimate, but by giving up, nekama. It is the detached attitude toward the world that brings about true happiness. The Satipatthana Sutta, the discourse on the foundations of mindfulness, speaks of pleasant worldly feeling, samasa sukha, and pleasant unworldly feeling, niramasa sukha. Niramasa sukha is far superior to samasa sukha. Once the Buddha did not receive even a single morsel of food when he went on his alms round, and an intruder remarked that the master was apparently afflicted with hunger. Thereupon the Supreme Buddha breathed forth the following verse. Ah, happily do we dwell, we who have no impediments. Feeders on joy shall we be, even as the radiant devas. 16. DHP 200. Unalloyed joy comes to a man who ponders thus: others may harm, but I will become harmless, others may slay living beings, but I will become a non-slayer, others may live unchaste, but I will live pure. Others may utter falsehood, I, however, will speak the truth. Others may slander, talk harshly, indulge in gossip, but I will talk only words that promote concord, harmless words agreeable to the ear, full of love, heart-pleasing, courteous, worthy of being borne in mind, timely, fit and to the point. Others may be covetous, I will not covet. Energetic, steeped in modesty of heart, unswerving as regards truth and rectitude, peaceful, honest, contented, generous, and truthful in all things will I be. Thus conducive to full realization, perfect wisdom, to nibbana is this fourth enlightenment factor: pity, happiness. V. Pasadhi Kam or tranquility is the fifth factor of enlightenment. Pasadhi is twofold. Kaya Pasadhi is calm of body. Kaya here means all the mental properties rather than the physical body, in other words, Kam of the aggregates of feeling, Vedanakandha, perception, Sunikhandha, and the volitional activities or conformations, Samkarakhandha. Siddha Pasadhi is the Kam of the mind, that is, the aggregate of consciousness, Vinanakanda. Pasadhi is compared to the happy experience of a weary walker who sits down under a tree in a shade, or the cooling of a hot place by rain. Hard it is to tranquilize the mind, it trembles and it is unsteady, difficult to guard and hold back, it quivers like a fish taken from its watery home and thrown on the dry ground. It wanders at will. 17 Such is the nature of this ultra-subtle mind. It is systematic reflection, Yoniso Manasikara, that helps the aspirant for enlightenment to quieten the fickle mind. Unless a man cultivates tranquility of mind, concentration cannot be successfully developed. A tranquilized mind keeps away all superficialities and futilities. Many a man today thinks that freedom and unrestraint are synonyms and that the taming of the self is a hindrance to self-development. In the teaching of the Buddha, however, it is quite different. The self must be subdued and tamed on right lines if it is to become truly well. The Tathagata, the tamed, teaches the Dhamma for the purpose of taming the human heart, Danto Sobhagava Dhammataya Dhammam Disti. 18. It is only when the mind is tranquilized and is kept to the right road of orderly progress that it becomes useful for the individual possessor of it and for society. A disorderly mind is a liability both to the owner of it and for others. All the havoc wrought in the world is wrought by men who have not learned the way of mental calm, balance, and poise. Calmness is not weakness. The calm attitude at all times shows a man of culture. It is not too hard a task for a man to be calm when all things around him are favorable. But to be composed in mind in the midst of unfavorable circumstances is hard indeed, and it is this difficult quality that is worth achieving, for by such control one builds up strength of character. The most deceptive thing in the world is to imagine that they alone are strong who are noisy, or that they alone possess power who are fussily busy. The man who cultivates calm of the mind does not get upset, confused or excited when confronted with the 8 vicissitudes of the world, Athalika Dhamma. He endeavors to see the rise and fall of all things conditioned, how things come into being and pass away. Free from anxiety and restlessness, he will see the fragility of the fragile. A story in our books tells us how when a mother was asked why she did not lament and feel pain over the death of her beloved son, said, "Uninvited he came, uninvited he passed away, as he came so he went, what use is there in lamenting, weeping, and wailing?" 19 Such is the advantage of a tranquilized mind. It is unshaken by loss or gain, blame and praise, and undisturbed by adversity. This frame of mind is brought about by viewing the sentient world in its proper perspective. Thus calm or pasadhi leads man to enlightenment and deliverance from suffering. 6. The 6th enlightenment factor is samadhi, concentration. It is only the tranquilized mind that can easily concentrate on a subject of meditation. The calm concentrated mind sees things as they really are, samahito yatha buddham pajanati. The unified mind brings the 5 hindrances, panchanivaranani, under subjugation. Concentration is the intensified steadiness of the mind comparable to an unflickering flame of a lamp in a windless place. It is concentration that fixes the mind aright and causes it to be unmoved and undisturbed. Correct practice of samadhi maintains the mind and the mental properties in a state of balance like a steady hand holding a pair of scales. Right concentration dispels passions that disturb the mind, and brings purity and placidity of mind. The concentrated mind is not distracted by sense objects. Concentration of the highest type cannot be disturbed under the most adverse circumstances. One who is intent on samadhi should develop a love of virtue, sila, for it is virtue that nourishes mental life, and makes it coherent and calm, equable, and full of rich content. The unrestrained mind dissipates itself in frivolous activity. Many are the impediments that confront a yogi, an aspirant for enlightenment, but there are 5 particular hindrances that hinder concentrative thought, samadhi, and obstruct the way to deliverance. In the teaching of the Buddha they are known as panchanivarana, the 5 hindrances. The Pali term nivarana denotes that which hinders or obstructs mental development, bhavana. They are called hindrances because they completely close in, cut off and obstruct. They close the doors to deliverance. The 5 hindrances are: Kamakanda, sensual desires; Vyapada, ill will; Vinamya, obduracy of mind and mental factors; Udakakukaksa, restlessness and worry; Visikika, doubt. Kamakanda, or sensual desires or intense thirst for either possessions or the satisfaction of base desires, is the first that binds man to samsara, repeated wandering, and closes the door to final deliverance. What is sensuality? Where does this craving, tanha, arise and take root? According to the Discourse on the Foundations of Mindfulness, Satipatthana Sutta, where there is the delightful and the pleasurable, there this craving arises and takes root. Forms, sounds, smell, taste, bodily contacts, and ideas are delightful and pleasurable, there this craving arises and takes root. Craving, when obstructed by some cause, is transformed to frustration and wrath. As the Dhammapada says, Tanhaya jayati soko tanhaya jayati bayam. Tanhaya vipamutesa natha soko kuto bayam. From craving arises grief, from craving arises fear. To one who is free from craving there is no grief, whence fear. DHP 216. The next hindrance is vyapada, ill will, hatred, or aversion. Man naturally revolts against the unpleasant and the disagreeable, and also is depressed by them. To be separated from the loved is painful, and equally painful is the union with the loathed. Even a disagreeable dish, an unpleasant drink, an unlovely demeanor, and 100 other trifles, may cause indignation. It is wrong thinking, unsystematic reflection, that brings about hatred. Hatred, on the other hand, breeds hatred and clouds the vision, it distorts the entire mind and its properties and thus hinders awakening to truth, blocks the way to freedom. This lust and hatred based on ignorance, the crowning corruption of all our madness, avijja paramam malam, indeed are the root causes of strife and dissension between man and nation and nation. The third hindrance consists of a pair of evils, dina and mitta. Dina is lassitude or morbid state of the mind, and mitta is a morbid state of the mental properties. Vinamya, as some are inclined to think, is certainly not sluggishness of the body, for even the arahas, the perfect ones, who are free from this pair of evils, also experience bodily fatigue. Vinamya retards mental development. Under its influence mind is inert like butter too stiff to spread or like molasses sticking to a spoon. Laxity is a dangerous enemy of mental development. Laxity leads to greater laxity until finally there arises a state of callous indifference. This flabbiness of character is a fatal block to righteousness and freedom. It is through virya or mental effort that one overcomes this pair of evils. The fourth hindrance also comprises twin drawbacks, udaka and kukaksa, restlessness and brooding, or flurry and worry. As a rule, anyone who commits evil is mentally excited and restless. The guilty and the impatient suffer from this hindrance. The minds of men who are restless and unstable are like flustered bees in a shaken hive. This mental agitation impedes meditation and blocks the upward path. Equally baneful is mental worry. Often people repent over the evil actions they have committed. This is not praised by the Buddha, for it is useless to cry over spilt milk. Instead of brooding over such shortcomings, one should endeavor not to repeat such unwholesome deeds. There are others who worry over the good deeds omitted and duties left undone. This, too, serves no purpose. It is as futile as to ask the further bank of a river to come over that we may get to the other side. Instead of uselessly worrying over what good one has failed to do, one should endeavor to perform wholesome deeds. This mental unsteadiness, kukaksa, also hinders mental progress. The fifth and the last hindrance is visikika, doubt. The Pali term 6 plus sikika literally means medicineless. One who suffers from perplexity is really suffering from a dire disease, and until and unless one sheds one's doubts one will continue to suffer from it. So long as man is subject to this mental itching, so long will he continue to take a cynical view of things, which is most detrimental to mental development. The commentators explain this hindrance as the inability to decide anything definitely. It also comprises doubt with regard to the possibility of attaining the jhanas, concentrative thought. In this connection, one may add that even non-Buddhists and yogis who are not concerned with the Buddha-Dhamma and the Sangha at all, can inhibit doubt, visikika nivarana, and gain the jhanas. The yogi who attains the jhanas inhibits all 5 hindrances by the 5 jhan angas, characteristics or factors of jhanas. Kamakanda is inhibited by akajita, one-pointedness or unification of the mind, vyapada by pity, joy, dhinamya by vitaka, applied thought, udakakukaksa by sukha, happiness, and visikika by vikara, sustained thought. The attainment of jhanas, however, is not the end aimed at. Jhanas should be made to lead to vipassana, intuitional insight. It is through insight that the yogi eradicates the latent corruptions, anasya kills us, and attains perfect purity. So long as impurities or taints, kills exist in man's mind latent, so long will the arising of papa, evil, in him continue. The practitioner of jhana whose purpose is to attain vipassana, commits no ill action because the hindrances are inhibited, but he has the impurities latent in his make-up and, therefore, he is not yet in a state of absolute security. But the Araha, the Perfect One, wipes out all the latent impurities with their rootlets and brings this repetitive wandering, samsara, to a standstill. He is one whose samsara is indubitably ended, for by him the noble life has been perfected and the task done. For him there is no more rebirth. 20. A sincere student who is bent on deep study, cuts himself off from sense attractions and, retiring to a congenial atmosphere, holds fast to his studies. Thus steering through all disturbing factors he attains success in his examinations. In the same way, seated in a cloister cell or some other suitable place far from the madding crowd's ignoble strife, the yogi, the meditator, fixes his mind on a subject of meditation, kamathana, and by struggle and unceasing effort inhibits the 5 hindrances, and washing out the impurities of his mind flux, gradually reaches the first, the second, the third, and the 4th jhana. Then by the power of samadhi, concentrative thought, thus won, he turns his mind to the understanding of reality in the highest sense. It is at this stage that the yogi cultivates vipassana, intuitional insight. It is through vipassana that one understands the real nature of all component and conditioned things. Vipassana aids one to see things as they truly are. One sees truth face to face and comprehends that all tones are just variations struck on the one chord that runs through all life, the chord which is made up of anicca, dukkha, and anatta, impermanence, sorrow, and soullessness. The yogi gains insight into the true nature of the world he has clung to for so long. He breaks through the egg-shell of ignorance to the hypercosmic. With that final catharsis he reaches the state where dawns for him the light of nibbana, the calm beyond words, the unshakable deliverance of the mind, akupakata vimati, Kamma 21, and the world holds nothing more for him. Says the Dhammapada, 373, to the bhikkhu who has retired to a secluded spot, whose mind is calmed, and who clearly discerns the Dhamma, there comes unalloyed joy and happiness transcending that of humans. 7. The 7th and the last factor of enlightenment is upekha, equanimity. In the Abhidhamma, upekha is indicated by the term tatramajhatita, neutrality. It is mental equipoise and not hedonic indifference. Equanimity is the result of a calm concentrative mind. It is hard, indeed, to be undisturbed when touched by the vicissitudes of life, but the man who cultivates this difficult quality of equanimity is not upset. Amidst the welter of experience, athaloka dhamma, gain and loss, good repute and ill repute, praise and censure, pain and happiness, he never wavers. He is firm as a solid rock. Of course, this is the attitude of the Araha, the Perfect One. Of him it is said, truly the good give up longing for everything. The good prattle not with thoughts of craving. Touched by happiness or by pain, the wise show neither elation nor depression. 22. Refraining from intoxicants and becoming heedful, establishing themselves in patience and purity, the wise train their minds. It is through such training that a quiet mind is achieved. Can we also achieve it? Lord Horder answers the question thus, yes. But how? Well, not by doing some great thing. Why were the saints saints? Someone asked. And the answer came, because they were cheerful when it was difficult to be cheerful and patient when it was difficult to be patient. They pushed on when they wanted to stand still, and kept silent when they wanted to talk. That was all. So simple, but so difficult. A matter of mental hygiene. The poet says, it is easy enough to be pleasant when life flows along like a song. But the man worthwhile is the man who can smile when everything goes dead wrong. Mention is made in our books of 4 wrong paths, Kataro Agati. The path of greed, Chanda, of hate, Dosa, of cowardice, Baya, of delusion, Moha. People commit evil being enticed along one or more of these wrong paths, but the man who has reached perfect neutrality through the cultivation of equanimity always avoids such wrong paths. His serene neutrality enables him to see all beings impartially. A certain understanding of the working of Kamma, actions, and how Kamma comes into fruition, Kamma Vipaka, is very necessary for one who is genuinely bent on cultivating equanimity. In the light of Kamma one will be able to have a detached attitude toward all beings, nay even inanimate things. The proximate cause of equanimity is the understanding that all beings are the result of their actions, Kamma. Santideva writes in Bodhikariyavatara. Some there be that loathe me, then why shall I, being praised, rejoice? Some there be that praise me, then why shall I brood over blaming voice? Who master is of self, will ever bear a smiling face, he puts away all frowns. Is first to greet another, and to share his all. This friend of all the world, Truth crowns 23. I have here made an attempt to give a glimpse of the 7 enlightenment factors, expounded over 2,500 years ago by the Supreme Buddha, for the attaining of full realization and perfect wisdom, of Nibbana, the deathless. The cultivation or the neglect of these factors of enlightenment is left to each one of us. With the aid of the teaching of the Buddha, each one of us has the power to detect and destroy the cause of suffering. Each one individually can put forth the necessary effort to work out his deliverance. The Buddha has taught us the way to know life as it is, and has furnished the directions for such research by each of us individually. Therefore, we owe it to ourselves to find out for ourselves the truth about life and to make the best of it. We cannot say justifiably that we do not know how to proceed. There is nothing vague in the teaching of the Buddha. All the necessary indications are clear as clear could be. Buddhism from beginning to end is open to all those who have eyes to see, and minds to understand. So clear is his teaching that it can never be misunderstood. 24. The only thing necessary on our part for the full realization of the truth is firm determination, endeavor and earnestness to study and apply the teaching, each working it out for himself, to the best of his ability. The Dhamma yet beckons the weary pilgrim to the happy haven of Nibbana's security and peace. Let us, therefore, cultivate the 7 enlightenment factors with zest and unflagging devotion, and advance. Remembering the saints of other days, and recollecting how it was they lived. Even though today be but the aftertime, one yet may win the ambrosial path of peace. Psalms of the Brethren, their Agatha, 947. May all living beings be well and happy. Notes 1 SN 46.5, SV 72, CDBP 1574. 2 SN 46.7, SV 75, CDBP 1577. 3 Dhamma is a multi-significant term. Here it means mind and matter, Namarupa. Dhammavikaya is the investigation or analysis of this conflux of mind and body, and all component and conditioned things. 4 SN 46.16, SV 79, CDBP 1581. 5 Samahavanodani. 6 Satipatthana Sutta, MN 10 or DN 22. See the Foundations of Mindfulness, the wheel number 19. 7 Parinibbana Sutta, DN 16. 8 SN, Sagathekavaga. 9 and 8.30. 10 Jainanasara Samakya, p. 31. 11 and 8.30. 12 Parinibbana Sutta, DN 16. 13 and 4.13. 14 Adapted from Silakara, Discourses of Gautama the Buddha. A translation of this discourse has been published in The Removal of Distracting Thoughts, the wheel number 21. 15 DHP 280. 16 Devas are deities. 17 DHP, Siddhavagga. 18 DN 25. 19 Uragajataka, 354. 20 MN 27. 21 MN 30. 22 DHP 83. 23 Translation by Kasapathera. 24 Fielding Hall, The Soul of a People.